The moon hung low over the Caribbean, a rim of hammered silver balancing on the dark sea, when the sloop Santa Esperanza slipped into the roadstead of Port St. Clarion. Its single lantern, hooded by a strip of sailcloth, cast just enough glow for the pilot to pick his way between the shoals. On the quarterdeck stood Serafina Montoya, known from Nassau to Cartagena as the Red Siren, though none would have guessed it from the prim wool gown that pinched her shoulders, or the ivory comb pinning back hair usually salt-stiff in a scarlet scarf. Tonight, she was Doña Sofia Morales, shipping factor for the Morales Valverde trading concern, come to discuss the safe conduct of merchant vessels in waters terrorized, rumor insisted, by her own crimson-sailed fleet. She despised the petticoats, but she had need of them. For months her captains had petitioned her to bargain a truce. The English crown, newly victorious in Europe, had dispatched warships to the Antilles, and privateering commissions were tightening like a hangman's noose. A decade of plunder had fattened the Red Siren's coffers. She preferred to keep that fortune rather than decorate a gibbet over it. To retire, she must first negotiate safe harbor for her men, and that meant parleying with the one figure whose signature could stay every rope and gun, Governor Elias Kensington, His Majesty's freshly appointed Lion of St. Clarion. Kensington's proclamations had reached even Tortuga. All pirates were to be hunted without quarter. Chief among them the Red Siren, for whose capture he offered a purse equal to 2 years of colonial revenue. The irony tasted of good rum to Serafina as her sandal heels clacked along the wharf. The very man who thirsted for her neck was the same she intended to charm into clemency. A mask of shy mercantile courtesy would serve better than pistol or cutlass tonight, though both hid in the false bottom of her trunk. A junior customs officer escorted her past warehouses slick with night mist to the governor's residence, a fortress of coral stone aglow with candlelight. Inside, a hush blanketed the corridors. Only the muffled shuffle of servants and the faint rhythmic scratch of a quill told that the household still woke. A butler announced her, and the library doors swung open to reveal Kensington at a massive mahogany desk, shirt sleeves rolled, dark hair falling over his brow. A half-burned taper threw gilded illumination on maps of the windward passages, spread like wounded albatrosses around him. He rose, incline of the head precise enough to signal British breeding, informal enough to suggest late-hour fatigue. Doña Sofia, he greeted, voice gentle but iron-shod. My apologies for receiving you so tardily. A convoy from Barbados was delayed by storms. I was confirming their manifests. Serafina lowered herself into a curtsy she'd practiced only that afternoon, praying the hem did not betray the sailor's stride underneath. The hour is of no consequence, Your Excellency. Trade, like the sea, keeps no clock. She infused her Canary Island Spanish with just the strained English vowels a colonial merchant's daughter might possess. It seemed to please him. His shoulders eased. They spoke first of tariffs, of barrel staves and sugar duty, of the scarcity of sound oak after the last hurricane season. Serafina offered the Morales fleet's services in transporting lumber from San Domingo for modest excise reductions. Kensington countered with tonnage limits meant to prevent smuggling of arms. They fenced politely for an hour, and each feint allowed her to study him further. He was not the hawk-nosed tyrant she had pictured. Lines of worry bracketed his mouth, marks of someone who listened more than he spoke. When their fingers brushed over an inkpot he passed her, she felt calluses. A sailor once, before whatever patron had lifted him to velvet waistcoats, she found herself wanting to ask about those voyages, about what constellations he favored for dead reckoning, about whether he missed the quickening sting of salt spray. Instead, she reminded herself that he would clap her in irons if he knew her name. At last, Kensington sat back, steepling his hands. I believe we can accord Morales' vessels a most favored status, provided your principals agree to assist in another matter. Which is? Serafina asked, heartbeat suddenly drumming. his eyes sea glass clear, fixed on her. Piracy. It bleeds these waters, Doña Sofia. Commerce falters, insurance rates soar, honest sailors die. The worst of them, they say, flies a red silk pennant and answers to a woman's voice. She schooled her features into mild concern. The red siren, I have heard tales. She is no tale. 3 weeks past, the frigate Hyacinth limped in, 40 souls lost. After an engagement with her squadron, he exhaled, and in that breath she detected not hatred, but a kind of pained bewilderment, as though violence puzzled him. I mean to end it. Yet to net a shark, one requires smaller fish. I ask that your captains provide intelligence unusual sail sightings, ports where contraband is unloaded. With such aid, I could deploy my forces more humanely, sparing civilian shipping. A more brazen corsair might have laughed. Instead, Serafina found herself touched. He wanted to protect, not dominate. And if she succeeded in retiring, giving him the red siren would cost her nothing more than a ghost she was ready to bury. Still, revealing too much too soon would smell of deceit. I shall relay your request, she answered. But you must know, merchants fear retaliation. Pirates, I'm told, can be merciless when betrayed. Then let us make it a bargain. He dipped his quill, wrote swiftly, sanded the parchment, and slid it across. Governor's safe conduct. Any vessel bearing your signal flag shall enjoy naval escort within 50 leagues of St. Clarion. I will not ask how you glean your information, only that it be true. Serafina read, blood thrumming in her ears. With such license, her own ships could sail under official protection, free from rivals and patrols alike. It was a prize even piracy had never promised, and it was being offered by the man who, by dawn's light, would sharpen every cannon against her if truth came out. She sealed the document with a practiced flourish, aware she had crossed an invisible line. Your Excellency is generous, she murmured. He smiled. Only a flicker, there and gone like a gull dipping beneath a wave. I prefer just. Generosity implies a cost. Justice is owed. The conversation drifted to lighter themes. He poured Madeira. She spoke of Seville's cathedral, which she had admired from a hilltop on a moonlit night, omitting that the hilltop was a garrison tower she'd escaped at pistol point. In return, he confessed a youthful folly, sneaking a cutter out of Devonport to race a friend, and running aground on a sandbar. The memory made him laugh. A low, unguarded sound she felt in her chest. A clock chimed 2. Servants had long since vanished. Candle stubs guttered in their pools. Kensington stood. I have detained you unconscionably. Allow me to summon an escort, please, she interrupted, the word too swift, too colored by something perilously close to longing. I mean, the streets are quiet. My lodgings are near. He hesitated, studying her face as though Twilight's riddles lay there. At last, he offered his arm. Then let me see you to your carriage. The city may sleep, but an unseen watch sometimes keeps it safe. She slipped her gloved hand around his elbow, wondering whether he felt how her pulse raced. They walked the colonnade, night-blooming jasmine perfuming the air. At the gate she paused, reluctant to step away. He appeared similarly anchored. Words hovered unsaid. Finally he bowed, and she curtsied, turning before temptation betrayed her. Over the next fortnight, Port St. Clarion buzzed. Morales vassals arrived daily, offloading cedar and molasses, then departing with Royal Navy escorts. In tavern corners, men muttered that the new governor had sold out to rich Castilians. Others praised his wisdom. Beneath the chatter, Serafina alternating between her merchant guise and covert midnight rowboats funneled intelligence to Kensington's office. Latitude and longitude of phantom anchorages, descriptions of careening coves, schedules of sloops known to traffic in stolen indigo. All accurate, all carefully chosen to avoid endangering her own scattered ships. She told herself it was strategic pruning, retiring from the trade by cutting loose the bloodiest blade. Yet each evening she found a reason to present herself at Government House, to clarify an invoice, to deliver a newly arrived chart, even to gift a jar of preserved guavas. And each evening after the clerks departed, Kensington asked if she'd share a cup of tea or a stroll along the ramparts. They debated philosophy, shared childhood tales, once argued heatedly whether man owed greater loyalty to law or conscience. He referenced Cicero. She countered with lessons of the sea, where the rule of survival sometimes eclipsed statute. He respected her candor. She admired his steadiness. One sunset, they stood atop the artillery platform overlooking the harbor. Squalls painted the horizon purple. Kensington traced the darkening clouds. Storms coming, yet the frigates I dispatched to the Yucatan Passage aren't back. Your reports were precise, Dona Sofia. If they engage the Red Siren tonight, I pray heaven grants mercy. The honesty in his voice tore her. She had delivered the frigates straight toward her own outlying captains, trusting they would flee rather than fight. But warships were proud, pirates quicker on the trigger. Wind hissed in the embrasures. She realized she was trembling. "Are you cold?" he asked. "No," she said, and then the truth spilled. "Yes, though not from weather." He faced her fully. "These raids weigh on you." "They should weigh on everyone." She inhaled jasmine and gunpowder, the sense of her two lives. "Governor, suppose you learned the siren might willingly strike her colors. Under what terms would you accept surrender?" His brow knit. "That would depend on her crimes, her contrition. The crown requires restitution, but I'm no zealot for blood. If she spared life where possible, I could argue for clemency." Heartbeat hammering, she whispered. "And if she feared betrayal? If surrender meant the gallows?" "I do not break my word," he said quietly. "If I pledged safe conduct, it would hold, though I'd stake my career on it." The sky chose that moment to open, rain drumming the parapet, scattering words. They dashed beneath an arch, laughing with the delight of sudden storm-soaked children. In the dimness, Serafina felt his fingers find hers, tentative, then sure. She raised her face, water glimmering on her lashes, and he kissed her, a meeting of lips warm despite the chill torrent. It was folly, exquisite, impossible folly. She let herself taste it for 3 heartbeats before pulling back. "I must go," she whispered. "There is much I must consider." He did not bar her path. "Whatever verdict you render, I trust it will be honorable." That night, aboard her flagship Calypso, hidden in Mangrove Sound, Serafina summoned her lieutenants. Lightning veined the sky above the tar-sweet bows. She unrolled Kensington's safe conduct, placed her ruby signet upon it, and spoke. "I intend to present myself to Governor Kensington, name the price of amnesty for those willing to lay down arms, and scuttle the fleet." Outrage erupted silver-toothed Esteban, cursing Spanish and English alike, Chiara the Neapolitan thumping her peg leg, demanding to know who had bewitched their queen. Serafina endured it until the storm's roar drowned all mutiny. Then she reminded them of the 6 men lost to Yellowjack the week prior, the French brigantine that nearly blasted them to flinders, the Royal Navy squadrons she had steered round only by luck. "We've carved our legend," she finished. "But legends end 2 ways, in song or on a rope. I choose the song." By dawn, half the captains had pledged to follow her into peace. Lured by the promise of pardons and land grants Kensington could secure, the other half sailed, cursing her name, into history's fog or the empire's cannons she could not tell. She dressed, not as Dona Sofia, but as herself. Scarlet coat, black breeches, cutlass gleaming. Yet she shipped for Port St. Clarion under a flag of truce, drums beating parley, harbor batteries trained iron upon her decks, militia muskets glittered along the quay. She felt exposed for the first time in years, like a turtle crawling ashore to lay eggs. Kensington awaited at the pier, alone save a drummer boy. The moment he recognized her, something profound and unspoken crossed his features. Shock, yes, but threaded with recognition and the faintest curve that might have been relief. She halted 3 paces away, rain-wash boards creaking. "I feared you would never trust me," he said. "I feared I did not deserve trust," she replied, voice steady, though her knees were not. "I am Captain Serafina Montoya, called the Red Siren. I have come to surrender and to negotiate amnesty for my crew under the terms you offered a humble merchant." "An honest merchant," he corrected softly, "whose honor I never doubted." Soldiers stirred, seeking orders. Kensington raised a palm. To Serafina he spoke clear enough for every ear on shore. "Captain Montoya, on behalf of His Britannic Majesty, I accept your parole pending formal articles. You and any who swear loyalty to peace shall be afforded safety until treaty ratification." Murmurs rippled, astonishment, discontent, but no musket fired. He nodded to her boarding party, who began tying up. Then, with public duty discharged, he stepped closer, voice now low. "Do you remember the question you asked me on the ramparts?" She did. "Under what terms would you accept surrender?" "Here are mine." He drew a folded paper, signed pardons already sealed, each blank but for names. "Bring your company to Government House before sundown, and when the ink is dry, I would ask that you consider dining with me. Not as prisoner or penitent, but as the woman who outsailed every man in these seas and still found her way into my quiet, landlocked heart." Emotion clawed her throat. "I may be the ruin of your reputation." He smiled that gull-quick smile she had learned to treasure. "I've survived storms worse than rumor. Besides, I mean to set a fashion. Governors marrying legends." Thunder rumbled like distant cannonade, yet the air between them felt suddenly calm. She extended her hand, the same that had once gripped blade and boarding line. He took it with the same firmness he had offered a timid merchant weeks ago, though now he knew its strength and scars. Together they walked the pier toward a future neither could chart, but both were ready to sail. Behind them, the crimson pennant of the Red Siren fluttered for the last time, folding softly against the mast, like a spent bird finding rest at last upon a friendly shore.